Okay, well, last week we completed our study of the book of Micah, so we're moving on this evening to have a look, or at least introduce the book of Nahum. And Nahum is the seventh book in the series of 12 minor prophets. The book begins in chapter 1, verse 1, with a heading or a title. It says, An Oracle Concerning Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. The name Nahum, the prophet's name, means something like comfort or compassion or relief, something along those lines. And Elkosh is given as the hometown of the prophet. Nahum of Elkosh, he's referred to as. But the location of Elkosh is unknown. Various suggestions have been put forward, but none of them have been confirmed. So we don't know exactly where Nahum came from. Neither do we know any other personal details about him. The book doesn't reveal any personal details of the prophet. So all we know is that his name is Nahum and he comes from a place called Elkosh. But this is the message that God revealed to him. The book begins by describing itself as an oracle concerning Nineveh. The book is concerned solely with the destruction of the city of Nineveh, which was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire, referred to with good reason in chapter 3, verse 1 as the bloody city. News of the destruction of the city of Nineveh is something that would be welcomed by the people of Judah, as it would mark the end of their oppression by the Assyrians. So in chapter 1 and verse 12 of the book of Nahum, we have this, Thus says the Lord, referring now to the Assyrians, though they be strong and many, they will be cut off and pass away. And then addressing Judah, though I have afflicted you, I will afflict you no more. And now I will break his yoke from off you and will burst your bonds asunder. And then in verse 15 of chapter 1 goes on to say, Behold on the mountains the feet of him who brings good tidings, who proclaims peace. Keep your feasts, O Judah, fulfill your vows, for never again shall the wicked come against you. He is utterly cut off. So news of the fall of Nineveh would be good news, someone bringing good news to Judah that Nineveh has fallen. The prophet Zephaniah also has a message concerning Assyria in Zephaniah chapter 2, verses 13 to 15, which says, And he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, and he will make Nineveh a desolation, a dry waste like the desert. Herds shall lie down in the midst of her, all the beasts of the field. The vulture and the hedgehog shall lodge in her capitals. The owl shall hoot in the window, the raven croak on the threshold, for her cedar work will be laid bare. This is the exultant city that dwelt secure, that said to herself, I am, and there is none else. What a desolation she has become, a lair for wild beasts. Everyone who passes by her hisses and shakes his fist. Again, there we see the rejoicing that takes place over the fall of the city of Nineveh. So Nahum's message is concerning Nineveh, and that's the sole purpose of the book. He said nothing about conditions in Judah or Israel at the time, but it's simply about the fall of Nineveh. The book is described as an oracle. The Hebrew word translated as oracle there is the word massa, which the authorized version translates as the burden. The message of Habakkuk was also described in the same way in Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 1. The oracle of God which Habakkuk the prophet saw, and also Malachi chapter 1 and verse 1. The oracle of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. So it's a word that means an oracle or a saying, and perhaps a burden in some sense being a heavy message, a heavy burden. The book is also described as the vision. It's the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. So Nahum received the message in the form of a vision. And visions were one way in which God communicated his word to the prophets. We can see this right back in the book of Numbers, in Numbers chapter 12 and verse 6. Where we have here this dispute between Miriam and Aaron, who are opposing Moses, and God intervenes and speaks on behalf of Moses here. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 6, God says to them, "Hear my words, if there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream." And he goes on to say that he speaks with Moses face to face. So there's a difference there. But God says that concerning the prophets, if there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. So vision being one way in which God would communicate his word to the prophets. And then in the book of Hosea, the prophet Hosea in chapter 12 and verse 10, God says here, "I spoke to the prophets. It was I who multiplied visions and through the prophets gave parables." So again, God indicating their ways in which he has communicated with the prophets. It was I who multiplied visions and gave them parables, he says. And the book of Isaiah opens by being described as a vision in Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So it described that as a vision. And then Obadiah as well opens as the vision of Obadiah. So Nahum's work is described as a vision, the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. The exact date of Nahum's message is something that is unknown. We don't know exactly when it was written, but it may be dated during the second half of the 7th century BC, before the destruction of Nineveh. It's about the destruction of Nineveh, so it's written before the destruction. And the destruction of Nineveh occurred in 612 BC. But written after the Assyrian attack upon the Egyptian city of Thebes, or No Ammon as it's also referred to, which happened in 663 BC and is mentioned in Nahum chapter 3 and verse 8, where the city of Nineveh is being asked, "Are you better than Thebes that sat by the Nile with water around her, her rampart a sea, and water her wall?" The implication there is that Thebes has already been attacked and destroyed, which was in 663 BC. So we can say that the book was probably written sometime between those dates, 663 to 612 BC, so somewhere in that 50-year period, but we can't be more precise than that. Other prophets who were working at this time were Jeremiah, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. Nahum's message, as we've said, concerns the city of Nineveh. About 150 years earlier, the prophet Jonah had been sent to Nineveh by God to warn them of the imminent destruction of the city. Jonah's message was simply, "Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be destroyed." But the people of Nineveh had listened and they repented at that time, and the destruction of the city was averted. God didn't destroy Nineveh at the time of Jonah. At the time of the writing of the book of Nahum, Nineveh is still the capital city of the Assyrian Empire. And the Assyrians play a key role in Bible history, and so it would be helpful for us to know a little bit about them. The earliest reference, Bible reference we have to Assyria and Nineveh is to be found in Genesis chapter 10 and verse 11, where the foundation of Nineveh is attributed to a character named Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10. This is in the list here as a genealogy of the sons of Ham, beginning in verse 6 there. Nimrod is mentioned in verse 8. Cush became the father of Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, and Akkad, all of them in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin, between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. So this is the earliest reference we have in the Bible to Assyria and to Nineveh, and its foundation being attributed there to Nimrod. You can see on the map there, Assyria, the region of Assyria at that time, or roughly around that time, being marked there with the three of those cities, Nineveh, Calah, and Asher. This is a bigger map here showing Assyria during the time of the patriarch, so in the time of the book of Genesis, and we see that region of Assyria there in the orange color to the north of Babylonia, and the city of Nineveh marked on the map there. So from its beginnings as a number of independent city-states on the Tigris River in northern Mesopotamia, or today is northern Iraq, Assyria steadily grew into a powerful empire with aspirations to expand and to dominate the Middle East. Its principal cities were Ashur, Calah, Khorsabad, and Nineveh. And Assyria was at the height of its power during what's known as the Neo-Assyrian period, or the New Assyrian period, which runs from around 900 BC to 612 BC, so a little under 300 years. During the early part of this period, there was some contact between Israel and Assyria, as is shown on an object in the British Museum called the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Shalmaneser III was the king of Assyria between 859 and 824 BC. And on that obelisk, it shows a series of panels with various kings bowing down before King Shalmaneser and offering tribute. And one of the panels there shows King Jehu of Israel paying tribute to the Assyrian king. You can see that in the picture on the slide there. After a period of internal discord and unrest, Assyria renewed its expansionist policy westwards during the reign of King Tiglath-Pileser III. The dates of his reign are given as 745 to 727 BC. He invaded northern Israel and took away captives. We can read of this in 2 Kings chapter 15, verses 19 and 20. He's referred to here by the name Pul. So 2 Kings chapter 15 and verse 19 says, Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land of Israel, and Menahem, he's the king of Israel, gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver that he might help him to confirm his hold of the royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver from every man to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. So at that point, Menahem pays him money and he goes away. So we can read on in verse 29 of 2 Kings, chapter 15 here. See what happens a bit later. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, so a different king now, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Ijon, Abel, Beth Maacah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Assyria. So at this point, captives are taken from the northern part of Israel, from the region around Galilee, the land of the tribe of Naphtali. In 1 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 6, we have a name of one of those who was taken captive at this time. This is the family tree of Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, and 1 Chronicles chapter 5 verse 6 mentions Beriah, his son, Beriah, whom Tilgath-Pileser, king of Assyria, carried away into exile. He was a chieftain of the Reubenites. So someone's named there as one of those exiles who was taken away. And then verse 29 of First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 26 of First Chronicles chapter 5 summarizes this. So the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, the spirit of Tilgath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and he carried them away, namely the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and brought them to Halah, Habor, Hara, and the river Gozan to this day. The tribes mentioned there who were taken away, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half-tribe of Manasseh, they were the ones that had been settled on the eastern side of the river Jordan. So the king of Assyria, Tiglath-Pileser, is now taken these people away into captivity. Moving on a bit, when King Ahaz of Judah was being threatened by an alliance between Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the king of Israel, Ahaz appealed to Tiglath-Pileser III and was granted help, but at a price. It came at a price. So 2 Kings chapter 16, verses 5 to 10 gives us this information here. 2 Kings chapter 16 verse 5 says, Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to wage war on Jerusalem, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not conquer him. So they've come together, Syria and Israel, and they've laid siege to Jerusalem, where Ahaz is king. At that time, the king of Edom recovered Elath for Edom and drove the men of Judah from Elath, and the Edomites came to Elath, where they dwell to this day. So Ahaz is facing some problems here. He's being besieged by Syria and Israel, and the Edomites have rebelled and broken away. And so verse 7 says, Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Ahaz also took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria, and the king of Assyria hearkened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, carrying its people captive to Kir, and he killed Rezin. And then Ahaz goes to Damascus and he meets the king Tiglath-Pileser there in Damascus. So Judah now came under the influence of Assyria at this time. That Ahaz had asked them for help and he'd had to pay the price, and now in effect Judah is having to pay Assyria for protection money. Isaiah refers to this time as well in Isaiah chapter 7, verses 17 to 19. Isaiah chapter 7, from verse 17. This is when Isaiah has told Ahaz to ask for a sign, and Ahaz says that he won't ask for a sign, so God says he'll give him a sign anyway, which is a young woman will bear a son named Emmanuel. And then verse 17 says, the Lord will bring upon you, and it's addressing Ahaz here, and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. So he's going to bring the king of Assyria against Ahaz. In that day, the Lord will whistle for the fly which is at the sources of the streams of Egypt, and for the bee which is in the land of Assyria, and they will all come and settle in the steep ravines and in the clefts of the rocks, and on all the thorn bushes and on all the pastures. In that day the Lord will shave with the razor which is hired beyond the river with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet, and it will sweep away the beard also. So forewarning them that the Assyrians are going to come and they're going to cause them some problems there in Judah for King Ahaz. And then in Isaiah chapter 8, verses 5 and 8 as well. Uh, Isaiah says, the Lord spoke to me again, because this people have refused the waters of Shiloah that flow gently and melt in fear before Rezin and the son of Remaliah. Therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria and all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels and go over all its banks, and it will sweep on into Judah. It will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. So another warning there of Assyria coming, that God would use Assyria as his instrument of judgment against Israel and against Judah. And that all begins with King Tiglath-Pileser III. Well, he is succeeded by his son Shalmaneser V, and his dates are of reigning of 727 to 722 BC. At this time, Shalmaneser went up again against the northern kingdom of Israel. This time, King Hoshea is king of Israel, and he became vassal to Shalmaneser, had to pay tribute. But when Hoshea rebelled against him, Shalmaneser then besieged the city of Samaria for 3 years, after which the city was taken and the Israelites were taken away into captivity. Again, we can read of this in the book of 2 Kings, in chapter 17, verses 1 to 6. Says, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, began to reign in Samaria over Israel, and he reigned 9 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, yet not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria found treachery in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and offered no tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria invaded all the land and came to Samaria, and for 3 years he besieged it. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria, and he carried the Israelites away to Assyria, placed them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. So here's the Samaria being taken by Shalmaneser, and the people taken away into captivity. This is summarized again in 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 9 to 12. Basically says the same as we've just read. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, the son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it, and at the end of 3 years he took it. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken. The king of Assyria carried the Israelites away to Assyria and put them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes, because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God, but transgressed his covenant, even all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, they neither listened nor obeyed. So this explains why it happened, that it was because of Israel's disobedience to God, that they hadn't kept the covenant, that the Assyrians came and took the city of Samaria and took the people away into captivity. Shalmaneser may have died actually before the final capture of Samaria. He started the siege, but he may have died just before the final capture, which would have been completed by his son, his successor, Sargon II. He reigned from 722 to 705 BC. Sargon also had some success in defeating an Egyptian army, which was the first conflict between these two superpowers, and he had other military successes in the west. But Sargon was murdered in 705 BC. He was succeeded by his son Sennacherib. His dates for reigning are 705 to 681 BC. And on coming to the throne, after the murder of his father, Sennacherib had to deal with some internal problems and rebellions before he was able to pursue a further military expedition to the west. In 701 BC, he attacked Syria and besieged the city of Sidon, before then moving south to invade Judah. Sennacherib captured several Judean cities, including the city of Lachish. He also laid siege to Jerusalem during the reign of King Hezekiah, but he failed to take Jerusalem. We can read of these events in 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 13 to 18. So 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 13 says, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, he's the king of Judah now, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong, withdraw from me, whatever you impose on me I will bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. So Hezekiah has to pay Sennacherib here, but Sennacherib doesn't go away. In fact, he sends his army to Jerusalem to threaten the city of Jerusalem and to besiege it. But he's not successful in taking Jerusalem. In 2 Kings chapter 19, we can read, well, if you have time and have the interest, read all of 2 Kings 18 and 19 to see the full story here of the siege of Jerusalem. But this is the outcome in 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 32. This is the Lord's message that Hezekiah appeals to Isaiah the prophet for him to appeal to God. And this is God's message there. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, Jerusalem, or shoot an arrow there, or come up before it with a shield, or cast up a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and he shall not come into this city, says the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. So God would protect Jerusalem and deliver Jerusalem from the Assyrians. An account of Sennacherib's military campaigns is recorded on what's called the Taylor Prism. It was discovered in 1830 at Nineveh, and it can be seen today in the British Museum, and it records on there the names of the 46 Judean cities that Sennacherib took. And he says that he shut up King Hezekiah in Jerusalem like a bird in a cage, but he can't claim to have taken it because he didn't. God saved the city. The picture there on the slide shows Sennacherib at the siege of the city of Lachish, the Judean city which he did take. And again, in the British Museum, you can see a room there full of the panels which depict the Assyrian siege and destruction, capture of the city of Lachish. So Sennacherib is sitting there on his throne, receiving those who are paying tribute to him now on that success. So Sennacherib was sent away. He returned to Nineveh after his campaign in the west, but at some point after he returned to Nineveh, he was murdered by two of his sons and succeeded by another son named Esarhaddon. And Esarhaddon reigned from 681 to 668 BC. Again, from 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 35. The end of the chapter there records what happened here. That night, the angel of the Lord went forth and slew 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. This is when they're besieging Jerusalem. And when men arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. Then Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed, went home and dwelt at Nineveh. So he goes back to Nineveh. And then at some point, we don't know how much time later passes, but verse 37 says, and as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch, his god, Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, slew him with the sword and escaped into the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So now we have Esarhaddon, who now reigning in place of his murdered father there. Esarhaddon continued to receive tribute money from those states in the west, including Tyre and Edom, Moab, Gaza, and Judah. And any who dared to rebel and refused to pay were dealt with very severely. It may be during this time that King Manasseh of Judah was taken into captivity. This is referred to in 2 Chronicles chapter 33 and verse 11. Manasseh was the son of Hezekiah, who was king when Jerusalem was being besieged by the Assyrians. So we're now in the time of Manasseh. He was one of Judah's worst kings. And verse 11, verse 10 says, the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they gave no heed. Therefore the Lord brought upon them the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks and bound him with fetters of bronze and brought him to Babylon. The king of Assyria isn't named there, but it would fit with the time of Esarhaddon. So he may well have been the king who was reigning at this time when King Manasseh of Judah is taken into captivity. Esarhaddon also led a successful campaign against Egypt, which extended Assyria's influence even further. The last great king of Assyria was Ashurbanipal. The map here shows the extent of the Assyrian Empire at this time. So Ashurbanipal, his reign was from 668 to 625 BC. He's referred to in Ezra, the book of Ezra, chapter 4, verse 10, by his Aramaic name of Osnappa, which the New International Version translates as Ashurbanipal. So you can see how extensive the Assyrian Empire became by this time, extending down there into Egypt. So Ashurbanipal, his last great king of Assyria, or Osnappa, as he's named in the book of Ezra, he recaptured and sacked the Egyptian city of Thebes, which we've referred to earlier, mentioned in Nahum chapter 3 and verse 8. after it had been lost following the death of his father. So he went back and recaptured it and sacked it. During Ashurbanipal's reign, the Assyrian Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. So to go back to that map again, we can see there just how extensive the Assyrian Empire covers really what today we think of as the Middle East. There you've got today you would have Iran and Iraq, and going into Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Israel, and going down into Egypt. All of that is the Assyrian Empire. So after Ashurbanipal's death, rebellions in various parts of the empire meant that it quickly went into decline. This period has been referred to as the First World War because so many nations were involved in fighting at this time. So the empire will now go into decline. But Ashurbanipal left behind in his palace at Nineveh a great library of clay tablets which contain cuneiform texts. And these were discovered in the 1850s, and they provide an important resource for the study of Assyrian history and language and culture. And some of these tablets are on display in the British Museum. And you can see in the picture there some of these tablets from Ashurbanipal's library. And they contain things such as the Babylonian flood account and the Gilgamesh epic. So important resource for understanding Assyria and the history and the language of that time. Ashurbanipal was succeeded by his son Asa-etil-ilani, reigned from 625 to 620 BC, and during his reign the Assyrians were driven out of Babylonia in the southern part of their empire. Asa-etil-ilani was succeeded by Esarhaddon II, also known as Sin-Shar-ishkun, from 620 to 612 BC, and he was the king when Nineveh was besieged and destroyed, and he died in the flames as the city burned. So Nineveh fell in 612 BC to a combined force of Medes, Babylonians, and Scythians, never to rise again. A remnant of Assyrians managed to escape, and they went to Haran, but in 609 BC, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon wiped them out. Well, say for a few survivors held on until 606 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar defeated those final few Assyrians and the Egyptians who had come to try to support the Assyrians at the Battle of Carchemish. These events are referred to in Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse 2, refers to this Battle of Carchemish. Jeremiah chapter 46. Verse 2 says, about Egypt, concerning the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates at Carchemish, and which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, defeated in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So the reference there to Pharaoh Necho of Egypt being at the river Euphrates. He's gone up there to support the remnant of the Assyrians, but they are defeated by Nebuchadnezzar at Carchemish. The events leading up to that as well are mentioned in 2nd Chronicles chapter 35, verses 20 to 22. Also in 2nd Kings, but it's more or less the same. So we'll read 2nd Chronicles here, 35 from verse 20. This is talking about King Josiah of Judah, who sort of gets involved in something he shouldn't have got involved in and ended up dying because of it. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, went up to fight at Carchemish on the Euphrates. So Necho's going from Egypt up to Carchemish to try and support these Assyrians. Josiah went out against him. So the Egyptians, they would have gone up through Judah in order to get to Carchemish. So Josiah goes out against him. But he sent, Pharaoh Necho sent envoys to him saying, "What have we to do with each other, king of Judah? I'm not coming up against you this day, but against the house with which I am at war." That's Nebuchadnezzar. "And God has commanded me to make haste. Cease opposing God, who is with me, lest he destroy you." Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn away from him, but disguised himself in order to fight with him. He did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but joined battle in the plain of Megiddo. And the archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am badly wounded." And he ends up dying of his wounds there. So Josiah had tried to intervene when Pharaoh's going up to Carchemish to try to support the Assyrians, and he ends up being killed because of that. So after the defeat of the Egyptians and that small remnant of Assyrians at Carchemish, Babylon was now the new dominant power in the region, taking control over much of the territory that had been held by the Assyrians. So on the map here, we can see now the Babylonian Empire, not quite as extensive as the Assyrian, but still significant. And you see Carchemish there to the north of that sort of pink-coloured area of the Babylonian Empire, where that decisive battle took place. So there's a regime change going on here. Babylon is now in control. So the Assyrian Empire was, for 300 years, was really held together by brute force and violence. And the Assyrians were infamous for their excessive cruelty and brutality, and feared by all who had dealings with them. A description of the Assyrian character is given by F.F. Farah in his commentary on the Minor Prophets, which is quoted in the commentary by Homer Haley. And we'll read through this here to conclude this evening. "Judged from the vaunting inscriptions of her kings, no power more useless, more savage, more terrible ever cast its gigantic shadow on the page of history as it passed on the way to ruin. The kings of Assyria tormented the miserable world. They exult to record how space failed for corpses, how unsparing a destroyer is their goddess Ishtar, how they flung away the bodies of soldiers like so much clay, how they made pyramids of human heads, how they burned cities, how they filled populous lands with death and devastation, how they reddened broad deserts with carnage of warriors, how they scattered whole countries with the corpses of their defenders as with chaff, how they impaled heaps of men on stakes, and strewed the mountains and choked rivers with dead bones, how they cut off the hands of kings and nailed them to the walls, and left their bodies to rot, with bears and dogs at the entrance of gates of cities, how they employed nations of captives in making bricks in fetters, how they cut down warriors like weeds, or smote them like wild beasts in the forests, and covered pillars with the flayed skins of rival monarchs." So although God had used Assyria as his instrument of discipline and judgment against Israel and Judah, it was now time for Assyria to face its own judgment. Isaiah forewarned of this in Isaiah chapter 10, verses 24 to 27. which says, "Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, O my people who dwell in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrians when they smite with the rod and lift up their staff against you as the Egyptians did. For in a very little while my indignation will come to an end, and my anger will be directed to their destruction. And the Lord of hosts will wield against them a scourge, as when he smote Midian at the rock of Oreb, and his rod will be over the sea, and he will lift it as he did in Egypt. And in that day his burden will depart from your shoulder, and his yoke will be destroyed from your neck." So words of hope for Judah there, that the day would come when God would relieve them of this burden of the Assyrians, and God would judge the Assyrians themselves. So it is the prophet Nahum's mission now to announce God's final judgment to come upon this wicked and this cruel nation, whose passing no one will mourn. So next week we'll look at the text of the book of Nahum and see what the message is there for the city of Nineveh.